All right, number 7. The hours of daylight in Chicago, Illinois, can be modeled by the function f given by this function here, where d is the number of days after June 21st, 2017, and f of d is the number of hours on that day. Part A, what is the amplitude of f? So remember, the amplitude is the number that's directly in front of sine or cosine, this one right here. So that tells me that the amplitude in this case is going to be 4.9. So the amplitude is 4.9. So that answers that question. What does it mean in context? Well, remember, the function represents the number of hours in a day. All right, so the wave is going to go 4.9 hours above the middle and 4.9 hours below the middle. So this is going to tell me that the longest day will be 4.9 hours longer than the average. And the shortest day will be 4.9 hours shorter than the average. Okay. The amplitude, remember, is the distance between the midline and the high or low point. In this case, the high point represents the maximum number of hours in a day. The low point will be the shortest or the least number of hours in a day. So that's your amplitude. Okay. The period, remember, we have to use this value right here. Okay. We have to use that b value to find the period. So the formula for period, we've learned, is 2 pi divided by b. So in this case, that's going to be 2 pi divided by 2 pi over 365. So I'm just going to use Desmos to calculate this. So let me pull up Desmos on my computer here. Okay, there appears to be a technical difficulty here, so we'll just wait for a few seconds for it to load. Okay, here we go. So we're doing 2 pi divided by 2 pi over 365, and we get a period of 365. Okay, in this case, it'll be 365 days. Okay. So this tells me that the number of the hours of daylight goes through a cycle every 365 days. So the hours of daylight goes through a cycle every 365 days. Okay. So that's B. C is the midline. Remember, the midline is the number that is outside the parentheses. There's a D value here. In this case, the midline is going to be 12.31. So the midline is going to be 12.31. Okay. That's the center. Okay, so that tells me that the average number of daylight hours, the average number of daylight hours is 12.31 hours. So the average number of daylight hours is 12.31 hours. For some reason, it's not letting me finish out the word hours there. Okay, so the amplitude is 4.9. Okay, that tells you that the longest day will be 4.9 hours longer than the average, and the shortest day will be 4.9 hours shorter than the average. The period we found is 365 days. That tells me that the daylight hours goes through a cycle every 365 days. And then we found that the midline is 12.31 hours. And that tells me the average number of daylight hours in a single day. It tells me that the average number of daylight hours is 12.31 hours. And that is your answer to that is it for number 7.